It only takes a matter of seconds to completely destroy your reputation, and today we have 8 guys who witnessed that firsthand. Players who went from being pretty unanimously loved by everyone to unanimously hated by the entire league. And here's how it happened for Devin Booker, who today has turned into one of the biggest villains in the game. Over the years, there's been a lot of incidents and moments that have picked him up a little hate here and there, but the real hate didn't start until Chris Paul joined the Suns, because before that the team was terrible, but Booker was playing great, so everyone had him as an underrated and underappreciated player, which got him a lot of support, but no one really looked into Devin Booker or cared enough about him to think of him as a real villain. But the first instance that this crossed fans' minds was back in 2019 when that clip came out of him saying that he didn't want to be double teamed in an open gym.
Hey bro, we not doubling an open gym, bro. Yeah, we are. I get that shit all season, bro.
A claim that he felt fully justified in making, but it seemed as if almost the entire NBA world disagreed, and that's where it started. In the bubble in 2020, fans started to get behind him being a villain. In 2021, the talks got a little louder as Phoenix started to succeed and made the NBA Finals. But the real moment that instantly turned Devin Booker into a true bad guy came last year, when he was on the front lines of getting embarrassed and slapped up by one man in the playoffs. Devin Booker had a great time talking trash to the entire Mavs team while they were up, most notably stealing the ball from Luka and calling Jalen Brunson soft. But when the Mavericks took the series to Game 7, Luka had the most disrespectful playoff performance I've ever seen, and spanked the Phoenix Suns while Devin struggled to score or really do anything. And while Devin now played the game quietly for the entire second half, being down by 40, the hate for him couldn't have gotten any louder. And it was from that moment on that he became a true villain of the league, going from underrated and underappreciated to laughed at for the entire offseason. And with how this team has come out this year, things have only gotten worse. But no matter how good a player is, and even if they do succeed, there's still a way to become a villain. And Kevin Durant did so on a much bigger scale, because in the blink of an eye, he had 29 other teams and all of their fan bases instantly turn on him. When KD left the OKC Thunder to join the Golden State Warriors, the entire league was flipped upside down. And there were so many layers to why this turned Kevin Durant into a snake within seconds of the news coming out. To start, Durant was abandoning Russell Westbrook and the Thunder with no notice. And it wasn't even like they were a bad team. They were just up 3-1 in the Western Conference Finals against the defending champion Warriors. While Golden State had just made the last 2 finals, winning one of them, finished with the greatest record of all time, and did so by having the 2-time reigning MVP and the first ever unanimous one. But because of a bad contract Steph Curry had signed, Kevin Durant was able to straight up walk onto the team. To have a top 3 player in the NBA join what was already at the time considered a super team couldn't have been any more unfair, which is why almost unanimously everyone agreed that the NBA season was useless, because we already knew who was gonna win. And we were right twice in a row until Kevin got injured. And still to this day, even though he has 2 championship rings, they hold next to no value because of the way they were won. Then there's LeBron James, who did something very similar to Durant when he made the decision. Now up until this point, he was one of, if not the most loved player in the NBA. He was on the Cavs, dominating the league, putting up some of the best numbers and performances we had ever seen, and doing it all by himself. He was single-handedly putting Cleveland on the map and putting them at the top of the league every season. It's how the story goes with a lot of players. A great player stuck on a bad team quickly becomes a fan favorite, just like with what happened to Devin Booker before the Suns started to win. Well, eventually enough was enough, so LeBron decided to leave, but did so in the worst way possible. He didn't tell the Cavs he was leaving. He made his announcement on live TV to everyone, including his team. He waited nearly a month into the offseason to do it, leaving the Cavs and many other teams already out of options on what to do with their teams now, and he joined a super team, making him not only the most disliked player in the NBA, but one of the most hated athletes in general in the entire world. And this hate towards him lasted for a while too, with him getting blamed for the entire super team era being started. On the other hand, Kawhi Leonard isn't nearly as hated, but I feel like over time he's become a villain of the league. Let's take things back a little bit to the early 2010s San Antonio Spurs, who were known for and pretty much invented load management thanks to Greg Popovich. Although at the time Kawhi usually wouldn't really set out for load management back then, seeing that he was in his early 20s. But then Zaza Pachulia took him out with an ankle injury, and he's never really been the same, because that ankle injury was followed up with him losing trust in the Spurs doctors and requesting a trade. Well, he fully recovered, joined the Raptors, and started taking a page out of what he learned from the Spurs, continuing to take games off due to load management throughout the season. But it was fine. He won an NBA championship as the only star of his team, making him pretty unanimously loved and respected throughout the league by fans and players. Then he gets to the Clippers and continues to miss games due to load management, which didn't help anything considering he still tore his ACL in year 2 and missed the entire 2021 season because of it. So this current season comes around, and after nearly 800 days of not playing any games, he comes back on minutes restrictions, not playing back-to-backs, and even came off the bench for a couple games. And by this point, fans were done with him. And speaking of being way too cautious, we have the opposite of that with this man, who, you know, was a 3-time consecutive defensive player of the year. Fans were behind him, the Jazz were a fun team, but then he did with the thing with the microphones, and obviously when this happened, nobody was caught dead wearing the number 27 jersey. Now Rudy got hated for shutting down play for everybody, while Ben Simmons became a villain for shutting down himself from playing. And it all stemmed from one infamous moment, the passed up dunk. Now I won't say Ben was loved before this, he was still a controversial player and a meme for not shooting the ball, but he was at least respected. Well, after the play, he was called up by fans across the world and even his own teammates. And then his career just spiraled out of control from there. And even with the fact that he wasn't a hero or even a fan favorite by any means, I've still never seen a decline the way Ben's proceeded to. Throughout the whole saga of refusing to play, sitting out games, letting his teammates down, and getting kicked out of practice, he became a joke. And not only did he fall off in terms of popularity, but apparently this is what becoming a meme can do to one's confidence. Ben Simmons fell off so much that he went from being an all-star to a role player in one season. And compared to where he was once at, even though the Nets are winning games, at this point, Ben's become pretty irrelevant. And speaking of irrelevant, Dwight Howard's still playing basketball in Taiwan, and his fall from being one of the most loved to hated players in the NBA was as quick as they come. He had dominated on the Orlando Magic and built a solid fan base over his first 8 years in the league. As the best center in the game, he was a top 5 player in the league at his peak and one of the most popular, being in multiple commercials every year. But then he joined the Lakers, and in just one season he fell off. And ever since then, his popularity took a nosedive just as quickly. The same smile and upbeat attitude that made him a hero that loved to play the game just as easily turned him into a guy that doesn't take the game seriously enough and lacks a killer mentality. So by now it's clear that changing teams is one of the biggest factors that goes into a player being loved to hated so quickly. And that was exactly what happened to Ray Allen. You see, even though that championship core of the Boston Celtics only played for 5 seasons together, they quickly developed a brotherhood, and winning a championship in their first year together was a great way to get that relationship started. And so was playing in a full 7-game series in the finals against the Lakers. And thanks to all of their big games, these guys felt like they had a strong bond and were in this together. But that's when things turned sour. The Heat were the team to beat, and that had created a rivalry with the Celtics. And after losing to them in the playoffs for multiple years, they hated each other. Or at least so we thought. Because when Ray Allen told none of his teammates and signed with the rival team in free agency, it was one of the biggest villain moves you could imagine. Fans everywhere turned on Ray, and so did his old teammates. Himself and Paul Pierce mended the relationship pretty quickly, but it took him and KG nearly 10 years to do so, with him still having not talked to a lot of these guys to this day. And even though Kyrie Irving and LeBron James seemed like they used to be close, they still have rarely talked to this day either after what Kyrie did. You see, on the Cavs, Irving was one of the most popular NBA players. Thanks to how good he was, the highlights he'd create, and the success he was having playing alongside LeBron made it hard not to like him. And up until 2017, everything was great. His career was going perfectly. But then when he randomly requested a trade off the team that just made the NBA Finals was when everyone turned on him. The move blindsided the NBA and didn't make any sense. And from there, Kyrie Irving's story as a hero was over, because he pretty much self-destructed his own story and turned into the villain of the league. With the terrible leadership on the Celtics, the flat earth take, the sitting out for an entire year, his comments to start this season, and many more things obviously really changed his perception to fans and the entire NBA. Vince Carter also changed his perception too and wasn't shy about it. Today we think of him as a fan favorite, a Raptors legend, and a future Hall of Famer. And his career started out great. He became a superstar in Toronto. He gave those fans hope for the first time in the franchise's history, and combined with that and some of the most insane dunks in NBA history, it's no surprise why he became a fan favorite in the league. But that changed pretty quickly. He wanted a trade, but they wouldn't give it to him, so he faked injury so he wouldn't have to play, played bad on purpose, and even told the other team what plays the Raptors were about to run. So obviously fans everywhere turned on him. It is kinda hard to blame Vince at the time though. In his team's best season, they finished with a 47-35 record, and he put up 27 points a game that year. While Antonio Davis followed him with only 13 points a game, then nobody else on the team even averaged double digits. So Toronto does deserve some blame for not getting this man any help. Things got even worse though when the Raptors had to trade him to the Nets in what turned out to be one of the most lopsided trades in NBA history. So he became a villain, especially to Toronto Raptors fans. Thanks for watching, don't forget to subscribe.